Hey everybody, this is Sean from Shootie School, and it's Metal Month at Toontrack.com. Today, EZbass is providing air support in this third video in my Metal Month series. If you dig it, you can grab a free trial of EZbass at Toontrack.com. So far in this Metal Month series, we've set up and optimized our DAW session, got guitar tones, and wrote riffs with Toontrack's EZmix, which there's also a free trial of. We've used multiple methods for creating beats with Toontrack's EZdrummer 3 and laid out our entire song structure. Today, we will bring in EZbass using 3 different methods for creating bass lines as we continue producing this metal song. Let's rock. Let's add EZbass to a stereo instrument track. Now, just like my EZdrummer workflow, I'll loop the verse section in my DAW and hit play. For this first method, we'll use the included EZbass Midi library to find a bass line for the verse riff. I'll play a bass groove. Since my verse riff completely obeys the key of B minor, I'll select B minor in the song key. Now that bass line sounds so much better. So when I select a bass line in the Grooves tab from now on, it will play back in B minor with few exceptions, which is super convenient. Now, I will select a bunch of filters so I'm not just auditioning files that are pointless for this metal song, which will also save me a ton of time. Now let's continue auditioning. Keep in mind, EZbass doesn't know my chord progression yet, so you may have to use your imagination a little until you get the bass line into your song track, where you can use the Edit Chords button to select the correct chord progression. This chorus 1 and chorus 3 from Halftime Pushy Rock will do, so I'll drag them to the song track. But I want to combine them, so I will cut up the MIDI with the split tool into 2 measure chunks, and I will just use every other chunk from each section to make my verse, as you can see me doing here. I'll drag it to measure 15 and hit play. This could work as is if we wish, and we'll come back later on to produce it. But before we move on, if you're the type to shy away from a piano roll or grid editor type workflow, the Edit Play Style feature is right here, and you can automate edits with it. Now a second method, which is my favorite. EZbass comes with a free plugin called Audio Sender. When I add this plugin to a guitar track, for example, taking note the name here, this plugin will send this guitar audio out to EZbass, which can later be transcribed into MIDI. Yes, it's an audio to MIDI converting workflow, which is a beautiful thing. In EZbass, on the Audio Tracker tab, I select Record Audio from DAW, and just select the name that is in the Audio Sender plugin, and hit play in my DAW for the amount of time I want to transcribe the guitar track for. After I hit stop, I let the audio tracker know I was playing guitar and not a bass guitar. And here, depending on how accurate your performance was, you can choose to let Audio Tracker examine your performance and assign any of these 4 articulations to the notes you played. Your results may vary on that, which is why you have the option to turn these off. Now I'm going to do a quick crash course overview of the Audio Tracker tab features. This Audio Tracker tab is giving you the opportunity to tweak your guitar's performance before it's committed to MIDI with a few extra features that the grid editor does not offer. Let me select and chop off these notes so we can work on an even 4-bar riff. I'll click drag a loop point and hit Shift plus spacebar to play only EZbass and not our DAW. We hear my guitar's performance and the newly transcribed bass playing together, and I can mix the 2 signals here. To make corrections and edits, I can just select notes and drag them to the notes I wish to have, and I can scrub them left and right for different note durations. I can also simply select a note and change its articulation. or use the articulation view here where you can edit many articulations at once. We'll hear articulations later. If I select this amount button, it will reveal a knob that adjusts Audio Tracker's threshold, meaning if I hear that there are some notes missing or too many notes, I can recover or add them back. I could also select Track Fast Notes, which makes EZbass even more sensitive to fast playing. Your results may vary on this one, so do test it out for yourself. If your timing was poor, you simply select the notes you want to quantize and adjust this slider. As you can see, the notes will move closer to the grid. And when we're happy, we'll click Add MIDI to Song Track. I'll do a quick edit. And now I have a new groove from the Audio Tracker tab to work with. I'd finish working with this groove here, but we'll use a slightly different method instead. Before we move on, I want to make 2 points which might pertain to you. If you simply decide to use your already recorded guitar tracks like we did just a moment ago, keep in mind that the performance and timing of the guitar and the bass will be identical, which isn't very natural in the analog world of humans performing. And the other point is this. In metal, a lot of the time, the bass does follow the guitar exactly, but not always, and in some styles, rarely. I want the bass to support the rhythm section as opposed to always following the guitar, which in many cases means to simplify the bass riff, or to have bass playing with certain drum hits even though the guitar is not hitting those hits, among many other producing tricks that we'll learn throughout our careers. So what I'm doing here is simply set up a new track to record my bass lines on, yet I'm using a guitar. I'll have a metronome count me in, but I only want to record to the timing of EZdrummer so I can lock in with the drums, not necessarily the grid. So I'll disable the metronome after recording starts. After I rewrite these riffs into bass lines, only in some cases I will skip the faster 16th notes that play on the guitar and play 8th notes instead, meaning half as many notes. Or instead of palm muting like the guitars, I might play an unmuted string but at a lower dynamic. And in an instance or two, I will skip a guitar turnaround lick and do like a slide or some other trick. These are some simple ideas for producing your bass lines so they are not identical to your guitar riffs. Now that we have our guitar recorded bass reference track, I'll add Toontrack's Audio Sender plugin to it and name that instance. In EZbass, you can choose many different fantastic tones with a pick or finger performance. I'll choose Genty Pick, and in the effects panel, I will turn the drive all the way down, which will result in a gainful tone but still have clarity. We'll start with the chorus bass line since it's not too simple but has a few articulations to work on. I'll disable loop in EZbass. I'll loop and place my playhead in my DAW. Go to the Audio Tracker tab and select New Session and select the correct Audio Sender plugin in the input menu and hit play. I select Guitar Audio and I'll uncheck Ghost and Grace notes. I'll hit play in EZbass. Since this riff repeats, we'll just work on the first 4 measures. It actually sounds good enough, but I know the material well enough to want to edit it. I'll bring the mix slider over to Midi, and I will change the grid to 8th notes, which is better for my brain when I zoom in. The first slide should be as long as possible. I'll first select a note and change the slide articulation to a regular hit, and I'll bring it down a half step to the correct note. Now I'll peel the note back to roughly a 16th note. Then drag a selection around the current note and the next note in the bass line. I'll select the slide articulation with no legato, so the second note is still picked. Now this sounds really close to my original performance, which really shows EZbass's value to me. The second shorter slide was handled really well. I'll just leave it as is. And I'll just do the same workflow to this third slide since it's the same as the first. Now the last slide in the riff is a lightning fast slide, so we could tweak and edit it as that, or we could try a grace note. So I'll simply select the slide and change it to the articulation of a grace note that goes up. I think it's fantastic. I'll add MIDI to Songtrack. I'll trim it and place it at the chorus. I'll select the Grid Editor tab. I'll mute my reference guitar bassline track and hit play. This is what our audio tracker tab looks like converted to MIDI and where we can continue editing it. It sounds really good. One thing that's not perfect is the main big slide though. The guitar slide is gradual at first before it picks up speed, which is something EZbass can't handle. So now that we're in the grid editor, I can right-click on the slide, go to Slide Speed, and select Accelerating Slide. Now it sounds less robotic and matches my playing even more. It's crazy. I think I'll shorten the 16th note to a less than a 30-second note, super short. Perfect. I'll make these edits on the other slides as I see fit. Now I'm going to do the rest of the riffs on my own time, and just like we did with EZdrummer, I will lay out the song structure in EZbass's Songtrack, all except for the bridge riff, which we'll do next. In order to accomplish the workflow we just covered, you need to play guitar, bass, or even keyboard. Let's instead build the bridge riff in the grid editor by hand, so we know what else EZbass can do for us. We can discuss doing this step by step in another video on my channel, but for now, you can see me simply drawing out the bass line by knowing what rhythms and notes are in my bridge riffs. Now this is very accurate, but of course it sounds like a robot. Let's check out the features to humanize this. We've already covered slides, so I'll add my 2 slides real quick. And keep in mind, the way I edit slides in this video is how I want the slides in this song to sound, not your song, not other styles of music. You can do them in many ways. Now, there are 2 half-step bends in this riff, which are the only non-16th notes here and here. With the arrow tool, I simply select one to highlight it, expand the MIDI values editor, and select pitch. Now, select the pen tool and click in the highlighted portion of the lane twice for where the bend starts and ends. Switch to the arrow tool again and drag the point up to 0.5 for a half-step bend. It's that easy, especially when you get to know the tool key commands, which are simply 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard. I may offset the timing just a hair, so let me grab that real quick. This sounds great. I'll do the same thing with the other, using the key commands. That was super fast and it sounds good. This is a good time to save this file before we mess with it anymore in case we need to go backtrack later and recover it. I'll drag it to my user MIDI and name it. Now I can tweak a few settings here to humanize this bass line. Opening the timing controls, I can select all my notes and apply swing, which is a classic trick, consistently moving certain notes closer to the nearest triplet. Way better than that, you can use the randomize slider, which will move each note forward or backwards randomly. There's no recipe here. You need to decide what feels right for your song. When I hear the guitars playing over this grid-locked bass line, it sounds fine to me, so I don't feel like I need drastic adjustments right now. The select and note menus are super powerful and fantastic feature-packed menus, which will be covered in a different video on my channel. But you'll notice there's some gaps of time in between some of our notes and overlapping notes as well, since we use the randomize slider. Let's simply make sure that all of our notes are selected. Go to the Notes menu and select Remove Overlaps and Silence. Everything seems seamless now, and I'll just tighten up the first and last notes in our riff. I could easily sign off on this, but now let's look in the MIDI values editor one more time and make sure velocity is selected since we can take this riff even further. I will select all notes and drag them to 100. This is the bass point I want to start from. Now, velocity is when you hit your instrument harder or softer, which results in different tones, but it also affects volume. And just like the timing adjustments we made earlier, there is no recipe for this. You do what you think sounds good for your project. Since I know well the rhythmic accents that the guitar played, I'll select them by holding down the Control key, Command on Mac, and clicking them in sequence. Now I can drag the velocity up of just those notes. Now I'll select all of the notes in this bass line. I'll expand my velocity lane to its max so I can see adjustments better and slowly tweak the randomized slider. Now this looks good except the extreme high notes and extreme low notes. So I can just click drag a selection around those and even them off just like a compressor or expander might work. Let's hear it. I'm happy with this. I'll duplicate it so it's the right length. There's a second part to this bridge which I'll whip together real quick on my own. Here's what that sounds like. Now, simply take the combination of using the included bass MIDI library, the audio tracker workflow, and the grid editor workflow, and you can get absolutely professional and real sounding bass lines. This is Sean from Shootie School. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and there are links in my description that will lead you to my free online communities of like minds for support and networking. Check out Toontrack.com for more info on 𝐍𝐄𝐗𝐓 and free trials of 𝐍𝐍𝐵ass and 𝐍𝐍�Mix. In the next episode, we will wrap this song up with producing transitions and a rough mix. So rock on!